We're ready,
Ake called out. The pugnacious Bloodclaw stomped towards them, kicking aside a dead Xenos in his haste.
The last of them are dead, but the mortals say there are at least 2 more packs of them in the area.
He spat.
Not that I trust them to tell one group of Xenos from another.
We're going with them,
Lucas said, not looking at him.
What?
Ake looked at Kadir.
He's not serious.
He snarled. Kadir looked at Lucas.
Are you serious?
When am I ever not serious?
Lucas shrugged.
We have a duty, pups. These folk are our life's blood. They are Fenris. Without them, we are nothing. I will not allow them to be made chattel while I play the fierce hunter.
This is not our duty,
Ake growled, stubbornly.
The enemy are out there. We must scour them from the face of this world. That is our duty. That is our purpose.
Others are already doing that, and more.
And we should be with them, rather than here.
Ake was shouting now. He stank of kill urge and frustration.
We should be at the forefront, fighting alongside the rest of our brothers. Instead, you have led us into the wild to pick off isolated foes and shepherd these weaklings to safety.
Lucas fixed his gaze on Ake.
And who are you to call them weak?
I was chosen by the strong.
Ake slammed a fist against his chestplate.
Look at them. They are cowards. If they are strong, they would have fought. Instead, they flee, these thin, hollow things.
He stamped on a dark Eldar helmet, crushing it, and the head within as well.
Why waste time protecting them if they cannot protect themselves?
They are protecting themselves,
Lucas said, softly.
They have fought. Can't you smell the blood on them? The stink of death and sorrow? Look at the wounds, fool!
He gestured to the mortals. Many, including Hether, were watching the confrontation now, wide-eyed and uncertain.
Would you have them match bronze against Hellforged steel? To what end?
I would have them prove themselves worthy, as I did, as we all did.
Ake swung out his arms, indicating the other Bloodclaws as they drew near.
This world, this galaxy, is not for the weak.
If the strong do not fight for the weak, then what is the point?
Lucas snarled. The words shuddered out over the ice.
Victory? Glory? Are you so blind you cannot tell purpose from desire?
2 quick steps, and he was in Ake's face.
If you want to go, go. I am no Jarl to hold you against your will. I will not tell you where to die, or when, and I will not waste breath explaining why you are wrong, pup.
Trickster, enough.
Kadir caught him by the shoulder.
Now is not the time.
Lucas shook him off and turned away.
Purpose is not something you are given. It is something you choose. I choose to help these mortals. I choose to help them survive. You can do as you wish. That is the last I will say of it.
The Adeptus Astartes burgeons legends of resolve, heroism, and sacrifice with each passing century. The domains of the Imperium enduring the single most perilous era of its existence. With the birth of the Cicatrix Maledictum, every chapter has relied upon singular individuals to maintain order and stability. Yet not all Space Marines are destined for command, nor does every Astarte seek glory in their duty. But on rare occasions, peculiarly irreverent souls eke out a legacy of their own choosing, regardless of the mayhem wrought by their hand. For today, we shall elucidate a Bloodclaw of the rout, content to sow discord for the mere delight of its enacting. The Jackal Wolf of the Vilka Fenrika, Lucas the Trickster. Though the Vilka Fenrika is synonymous with stoicism and righteous fury, there is an aspect of the Wolf King's bloodline which is all the more cunning in its aspect, exemplified by an unusual Astartes. Said to have been inducted into the chapter by the dour wolf priest Ulrich the Slayer, the ominous spiritual leader of the rout doubtless saw within the young boy upon the ice a weird worthy of the havoc he would cause. Known as Lucas Strifeson by his peers, though the promising aspirant quickly showed his pedigree in combat, which rivals, if not exceeds, many a wolf lord, the rebellious Astartes, to this day, has refused to ascend past the rank of a Bloodclaw. More than worthy of being inducted into the ranks of Logan Grimnar's great company should he wish, Lucas regardless abhors the tawdry hierarchies of command, nor wishes to ever stand above his peers. His cunning, by far his most dangerous trait. During his then company's pursuit of a rogue sect, Lucas managed to manipulate an Orc war to erupt into infighting, which could only be adequately described as a greenskin civil war. Such was the devastation wrought from Lucas's actions. The technologies of the rogue adepts of Mars turned against their masters, and in time would sunder hundreds of renegade space marines allied to their cause. Earning titles such as the Laughing One, Jackal Wolf, and the Trickster, many a foe has underestimated Lucas's immense bravery due to its overshadowing of his boundless scheming tendencies. Revered by many a Bloodclaw as the eternal rebel within their midst, Lucas's antics inspire the most free-spirited members of his chapter. His confinement of even a delegate of the Emperor's Holy Inquisition within a Grok's breeding pen while in mating season, earning him somewhat of a cult following amongst his kinsmen. Beaten to unconsciousness on more than one occasion for his pranks, incidents such as the spiking of Wolflord Hrothgar's ale with bloat-toad venom and wrath of Wolflord Bjorn Stormwolf, wherein Lucas soiled his prized Terminator armor with bloodlice, would have cost the trickster his life, were it not for Ragnar Blackmane's intervention, staving off the killing blow. Paying for his mercy by assuming responsibility for Lucas as a member of his own great company, not even the Blackmanes could tolerate the capers of the Jackal Wolf, and so, to maintain relative peace within the chapter, a new tradition was made. Njal Stormcaller, High Rune Priest of the Rout, declared that each tumultuous Hellwinter of Fenris's seasons, the Wolf Lords would brawl, their prowess in combat saving them the displeasure of inducting the Trickster into their respective great company. From Blackmanes to Sea Wolves, Grimbloods to Iron Wolves, whether led by Finn Gorison, Engir Krakendum, or Kjarl Grimblood, only the High King would be spared the ignominy of muzzling the Jackal Wolf. With the conclusion of each contest, his former Jarl would proclaim the crimes committed within his great company. Such were the incidents caused within the ranks of the Sea Wolves. Jarl Krakendum spoke of the rerouting of sewage pipes into personal quarters, shaving of Astartes' manes whilst they slept, vandalization of Ceramite warding runes, and even the dousing of veteran Longfangs with troll pheromones. The last such incident leading to, well, the least said the better for the unfortunate Longfang who remains shaken to this day, with his injuries incurred. Passing from Jarls Gorson to Krakendum, Grimblood to Gnarlfist, the Trickster's saga outlasts many a vaunted scion of the rout, his nominal mentorship by the rune priest Hrek Galerunner slightly reining in his impetuous nature. Disdainful of the haughty and level-headed objectives of his chapter, the Trickster is regardless extremely loyal, his pranks regardless of their misery induced, never leading to the death of his kin. Never losing a duel nor battle for a time, the Jackal Wolf's mischief when turned on his enemies makes his infamy within his chapter look in contrast like child's play. Even unarmed, the plots of the Laughing One never fail to bring a smile to his mjod rouged face. The scrappiest of brawlers, bar none, when armed with his personalized Wolfclaw and plasma pistol, his flurries of attacks are an unorthodox sight to behold as he dodges, weaves and parries past the most capable enemy attacks. Never remiss in including rude gestures and foul language in his taunts, the Trickster has a supernatural talent for angering his opponents. The pelt which drapes his armor, skinned from a chameleonic doppelgrangle, obfuscating his form, which further frustrates his enemies. Spiteful to a fault, the Jackal Wolf never forgets slights made to him nor his chapter, for even the most senior members of his kin are wary to incite his ire knowing that their efforts to curtail them will regardless utterly fail. Yet such is his value to the rout, in their time of need, an uncomfortable tolerance is permitted to the Jackal Wolf. For in their time of need, Lucas's eccentricities are a boon if harnessed properly. On one occasion, his feasting was interrupted within the fortress monastery, the Fang, a band of Bloodclaws bringing news to their rabble-rouser that the ruinous powers threatened to destroy them from orbit. Incredibly drunk, yet unwilling to shirk his duty, Lucas eased tensions within the Great Hall before answering the vox demands of the Pawns of Chaos, the threats of the Chaos Lord, Mofrank of the Wordbearers Legion, doing little to intimidate the Trickster. Having already slain dozens of Space Wolves and the victim of his prior teasing, Wolflord Hrothgar, Lucas resolved to bring justice to the arrogant and preening traitor. Vowing to bomb the Ayat from orbit, the Chaos Lord's pride proved his downfall as Lucas challenged him to a duel on the open ground of Fenris. His acceptance of this test of honor doomed to fail. Transmitting a meeting point for their bout, Lucas closed the Voxcaster and continued drinking, resting soon after with one eye open as he explained that he had transmitted an Eldar Corsair-grade corruptor virus on board Mofrank's ship. The coordinates given for the duel masking ship coordinates to make translation into the depths of the Immaterium. As Mofrank set upon the meeting for the duel, the ice beneath his feet broke, plunging him and his honor guard into the waters below. The Wordbearer's warship, now of no threat as it travelled far from Fenris's domains, Chaos Lord Mofrank cursed his fate as he and his men slowly drowned. His underestimation of the Jackal Wolf, not to be the last who fell for the trickster's ploys. During 641.M41, within the Atagelt of the rout, the dispute of who would assume Lucas into their ranks began. Engir Krakendum, victorious in his brawl against Kjarl Grimblood, the trickster would now be his great company's responsibility, as Hrek Galerunner escorted the Jackal Wolf to his new packmates. Lucas's introduction to Kadir, Ake, Halvar, Einar, and Dag started with a playful trap of bloodlice launched on his plate. Lucas giggled at the jest before asserting his dominance as each of his new packmates attempted to best him in a fistfight, one after the next. Grimblood's great company, tasked with hunting a kraken to diminish the laxity felt through their lack of battle. Lucas and his Bloodclaws managed to track and injure the beast gravely before Grimblood arrived to enact the killing blow. Achieving petty revenge for the slight made to his Bloodclaws' efforts, at the feast of their conquest, Lucas dropped a concoction of Kraken ichor, Drake blubber, and accelerant into a fire pit, setting alight his new Jarl's hair and beard. Searing Grimblood to the scalp, though Lucas doused him with a barrel of Mjod, the Jarl saw no humour in the act, Grimblood demanding his men hunt the fleeing trickster, as several of his lieutenants swore they would break his bones as recompense. Playing off the rout's greatest flaw, their anger, Lucas set traps for every man who pursued him, dousing many a Longfang in troll urine, and worse substances should they get too close to catching him by the tail. Lucas's squad mimicking the cry of a wounded drake to lure Jarl Redmore into a cave before trapping him and his honor guard inside, dropping nests of bloodlice onto Jarl Krakendum as he drew close to pursuing his former charge, and pushing Jarl Gorson into a troll lair to blunt his advance. The hunt for the Jackal Wolf stalled, as reports of dismay abounded. For 3 days, revered veterans such as Bront Rocktooth tracked Lucas to no avail, Jarl Grimblood out of desperation meeting with Runepriest Galerunner within Jarlheim's Hall of Silences for guidance. Reminding the Jarl of the Chamber's significance, the chapter's greatest shames were laid bare as ordained by Leman Russ, the evidence of their past ignominy serving to temper their pride, proving a fitting allegory to his treatment of Lucas. Armor from the months of shame, tattered uniforms of the butchered Delsvan wardens of Masanor Corps, and other shameful tokens such as the Legion armor of the consul Obsequiari, a rank predating the reunion of Leman Russ with his legion during the era of the Great Crusade. In days of yore, such legionaries were tasked with culling those of the Sixth, whose kill urge proved too unruly to fight effectively. Yet while Lucas ran rampant within the Ayat, the Dark Eldar Corsair, Duke Trevalius Liscus, discontent with his tawdry slaughter of unworthy victims, plotted a hunt on the world of Fenris for the sake of glory. A veteran of the War in Heaven, who had once commanded the infamous Sky Serpents, the Serpent as he would be known had grown despondent with the politics of the Dark City and roamed the stars, stating his twisted desires, the domains of the death world of the Space Wolves, serving as a more deserving prey. As Lucas and his Bloodclaws hid from their kinsmen inside an ancient barrow, so too did the Drukhari use the hazardous Hellwinter to cover their invasion as they began to delight in their depraved vices. Bonding over stories of past campaigns as the Bloodclaws drank from one of Lucas's stashes of Mjod, made through extensive experimentation, survivors of the Dark Eldar's cruelty found upon the Astartes as the Xenos hunt began in earnest. Hefa, shield maiden of the Jotvian tribe, relayed the loss of her kinsmen, Floki and Asgard, at the hands of the Xenos, a crime Lucas, as one of the Sky Warriors, would not allow to go unpunished. Asking Hefa to scream, to draw them close, the Bloodclaws ambushed the Drukhari. Lucas ordering her people to rally the warring tribes of Fenris to combat the greater threat in their midst, as they resolved to return to the Fang. Carrying the corpse of one of the Eldar within one of the drained barrels of Mjod, Lucas and Halvar returned to the Aet, using long-forgotten passageways, known only to the Jackal Wolf. Passing through the kitchens tended by the mortal serf, Burla, Lucas wormed his way back into the domains of Grimblood and Galerunner. Presenting the dead Eldar to his Jarl, the Space Wolves temporarily forgave Lucas for his transgressions. Rallying to oppose the foe as the Space Wolves began to mobilize, Grimblood warned Lucas that, as was his talent for foresight, he had seen in the flames the death of the Jackal Wolf, his heart torn from his chest. Meeting with the young Iron Priest, Fimir, with sanction from Jarl Grimblood, Lucas requested the use of several armaments to better hunt the Drukhari. His filching of numerous grenades of the armory interrupted as he marveled at a relic of the Dark Age of technology housed within a suspensor plinth. Explained by Fimir to be a stasis bomb pilfered from a war zone of cooperation with the Dark Angels, the Iron Priest had toiled to no avail to restore its detonator, yet hoped to one day repair it to functionality. Slaying the Archon, Casquel, as the Grimbloods beset the raiders, Lucas and his men captured several Drukhari survivors from their ambush. Their failed attempts to interrogate their prisoners, forcing Lucas to eat the brains of the last of their number in order to locate their base of operations, using his implanted Astartes organ, the Omophagia. Losing Arche and Dag in the conflict, Lucas's Bloodclaws, despite their grief, nonetheless fought their way to Sliskus, as he withdrew to his flagship, the Incessant Agony. Having stowed away aboard the Duke's raider transport, Lucas turned its disintegrator cannon upon the crew stations of the ship. His attempt to sunder the flagship interrupted as the Drukhari leader struck. Dueling Duke Sliskus in single combat, the Eldar's blade, coated in psychovampiric circuitry, cut deep into Lucas's flesh. His liquidator pistol spewing caustic blood onto the Jackal Wolf's ceramite, which evaporated and, once inhaled, overwhelmed Lucas's nervous system. Racked with pain, Lucas felt Sliskus tear his secondary heart from his chest, ignoring his agony as he hawked acidic spit into the Duke's face, grinning at the sight of his burning skin before leaping from the ship into the void. Rescued by his kinsman, Lucas was taken to the Aet's apothecary to treat his wounds. Yet to Jarl Grimblood's fury, Iron Priest Fimir explained that he had been convinced to fit his newly restored stasis bomb to the empty space of Lucas's chest, now vacant of his secondary heart. The only soul to have ever bested Lucas in combat to this day, though the Jackal Wolf was humbled by his encounter with the Serpent of Gomorrah, Lucas is nothing if not resourceful. The ever-present calamity of the stasis bomb within his chest, unsettling those within his chapter, and soon those among the most feared of the Imperium's enemies. Humbled, barely, from his survival of his duel with the Serpent, Lucas's service within the Grimblood's great company would continue to earn his Jarl a strange kind of glory with his efforts procuring the Vox relay station of Pollux Tertius. Claiming such a staging ground would allow the great company to purge the Xenos from the industrial world below, Lucas bearing responsibility for such a mission as penance rather than glory, his absence from Grimblood's invasion force hoping to prevent the Jarl's well-made plans from being ruined. Intending to leave Lucas stranded upon the Vox station for a time, Grimblood once again underestimated the trickster's capabilities due to Lucas's limited vernacular speaking the Orc dialect. Using the communication array to stoke rivalries within the Greenskin army, so successful were his expletive-laced taunts as Grimblood and his men made planetfall, they found the battle all but won, with no glory to claim. Preparing himself far in excess to any prior campaign he had fought, Jarl Grimblood impatiently waited for the next Hellwinter to approach, taking great pains not to fail in the contest, as his torture commanding the Jackal Wolf finally came to an end. Now the responsibility of the Iron Wolves' great company, it was not long before Lucas began to gain favour with its Bloodclaws. Their quirk of not allowing those not showing great talent in artifice into their ranks made exception to with the inclusion of Lucas. Having often voiced his lack of respect for the dour scions of Eagle Ironwolf on many occasions, Lucas grew bored of his new great company quickly, yet a chance for new excitement soon presented itself. The High Rune Priest, Njal Stormcaller, given sanction by Logan Grimnar to venture to the Thousand Suns homeworld of Prospero, the Tempest that walks would soon embark upon a quest to save the long-lost 13th Great Company of their legions past. Assembling a bespoke Great Company for this mission of utmost importance, Lucas reveled at the chance to join their Storm Riders, despite those already in the fold's cold reception. Alongside legends of the chapter, such as Arjak Rockfist, Sergeant Valgathir, and even the venerable dreadnought Björn the Fell-Handed, Lucas joined this merry band of pilgrims. The trickster, borrowing a band of Ironwolf's Bloodclaws, Artin, Bard, Gudbar, and Herleaf to fight by his side, promising adventure to his brash kinsmen. Upon translating to the Prospero system, the Stormcaller made all haste to the surface, leaving the Jackal Wolf behind to prevent his schemes complicating their endeavor. Procuring the gunship of Harkon Reaverborn by blocking his armor's recyclers and subsequently stealing his helmet as he cleaned his panoply, Iron Priest Aldrikel gave leave to Lucas aboard Stormfang designation Forfang as Harkon arrived too late to deploy. Showing an unspoken skill as a pilot, as are the many talents of this unassuming Bloodclaw, Lucas and his comrades descended upon the city of Tizca, enacting an emergency disembarkation as the visage of the Crimson King loomed in the skies above. Combating hordes of cultists of Magnus as the Stormfang's collision detonated, the Bloodclaws of Lucas remained one step ahead of Njal's band of warriors, seemingly without intent to do so. Reuniting with the Fellowship of the Stormcaller, Lucas identified the hub of the portal maze, which the Space Wolves attempted to navigate. His kinsmen snatched by the forces of chaos, as the Storm Riders pushed into the heart of the labyrinth, Lucas bested the Changeling and Brew Scribes, which barred his path. Confronting Magnus the Red, as the Demon Primarch attempted to recruit the Trickster to his cause, Lucas presented a piece of parchment snatched from his encounter with the Blue Scribes, which Magnus believed to be his treasure, the Spell of Unlocking. Aiming his lightning claw to the stasis bomb beneath his chest, should Magnus attempt to end him, the bomb would detonate, denying the Cyclops victory, as his immobility of years unending would allow his rival brothers time to exceed his own glories. Peering into the future of a fate wherein he unleashed his wrath upon the Trickster, Magnus foresaw the stasis bomb's explosion to indeed be the last shape performed by the Laughing One, his smile still visible as his flesh vaporized as Magnus remained frozen for centuries. Bargaining to give Magnus the parchment should he free his Bloodclaw kinsman, the Demon Primarch released Lucas and his kin from their confinement as he claimed his prize. Realizing the Trickster who have bested even his cunning, Magnus clutched a useless note which was not the spell he believed it to be, Lucas and his Bloodclaws escaping through the portal, laughing as they fled. Returning to the side of his kinsmen as they began preparations to bombard the planet, only ashes would be left of Prospero as the wrath of the Sons of the Wolf King once more set its surface ablaze. The inclusion of Lucas into the saga of the Storm Riders never intended. His deeds regardless cemented their victory against the chapter's nemesis, where not even the mightiest of their creed could have succeeded in his place.
We cannot sail across the oversea without a named Lord of Runes,
he protested. There was much nodding and thumping of the tables from the other veterans, while the thralls looked on with bewilderment, not sure how to act. He pointed to the shoulder pad of his armor. Njal saw that it was blank, the symbol of the Drakeslayer painted over with the blue-grey of the chapter. The others had also removed their former Great Company insignia.
I feel naked without my Aetrune. Very well,
conceded Njal, as the demands grew in frequency and volume. He cast his mind back into the earliest memories of his time before the Sky Warriors had come for him.
There was a story my uncle told me, when I was a bairn on his knee, the night after my father had been killed in battle. He said that my father's spirit had been taken by the Valkyr to ride on the storms between worlds, fighting the enemies of the Allfather for eternity. We shall go with our ancestors upon that tempest. We are the Storm Riders.
The Space Marines roared their approval, and the higher pitch of the thralls joined it in praise of this decision. Logan Grimnar smiled broadly, drained his horn in one long draft, and held up the empty horn to the assembly.
The Storm Riders!
He shouted. The answering bellows, stamping of feet, and tankards slammed on tables rivaled a company many times its size. When the resounding endorsement had died down, a lone voice called out from the direction of the great doors.
Legendary! Count me in!
All eyes turned to the newcomer. He was dressed in the Space Wolves battle plate. Its markings were those of a Bloodclaw, though the wearer was clearly of a greater age than would be expected of such a novice position. His hair was a violently auburn mane, with a short, narrow beard and flowing moustache of the same. His nose was pointed, his cheeks and brow craggy. Most prominent was the insincere grin smeared across his features.
All-Father help us, growled Njal. Lucas.
Stepping into the hall, Lucas gave a brief nod of respect to the roused veterans, and another for the Great Wolf. He walked towards the Stormcaller, who stared at the newcomer with a deeply creased brow. Though whether in confusion or annoyance, Lucas could not guess.
It seems this sort of endeavor, mission, quest needs every pair of capable hands.
Lucas turned, put fingers to his lips and whistled sharply, twice. The clump of boots resounded from the corridor beyond the great doors, and several seconds later, a cluster of 7 young space wolves appeared. Their beards were short, hair worn in complex braids and spikes of honor of their adoptive pack leader's flamboyant style. The markings on the grey armor were of Bloodclaws, the lowest rank of warrior after receiving their black carapaces to become Space Marines.
I have brought some friends, which should count in my favor, yes?
Where did you find these men?
Demanded the Great Wolf. He thrust a finger towards the Bloodclaws, indicating the great company symbols on their pauldrons.
These warriors are of the Iron Wolves. Does Vorik know they are with you?
I have borrowed them.
Lucas replied with circumspection.
Vorik Gnarlfist probably hasn't yet noticed their absence. Besides, I fear we stray from the point of my timely intervention. My friends, formerly of the Iron Wolves, and I find ourselves absent of an assignment. This jaunt to Prospero sounds ideal.
Jaunt,
growled Njal. Lucas continued hurriedly, looking at Logan.
Unless you would prefer that we came with you to rendezvous with the Night Wolves, Great Wolf.
The look of horror and then indignation that clouded Logan Grimnar's face was reward enough, but the offer, or threat, had the desired effect.
The trickster is right, Njal. All warriors are a boon to your cause.
This has been a tale of the Great Imperium of Man, read by the Remembrancer. The deeds of the trickster often jar with his kinsmen, the discomfort felt for his jests and pranks, a small price to pay for his cunning and bravery. Humor is a quality often misinterpreted, for those who laugh in the face of grim fate are often the strongest of will and determination. Levity is a powerful tool, for it can distract from dire circumstance or bring joy to those who suffer. For those who excel at making others laugh, often shoulder burdens unseen and unheard. So spread joy and revelry where you can, for it is the glimmer of such light which brightens the darkest of times. Yet should your mischief be made to those without a sense of humor, be prepared for the consequences of mirth made at their expense.